Hello and welcome to Records and Information Management for Chief Administrative Officers. I'm Avalon Snell, a RIM specialist with the Utah Division of Archives and Records Service. This brief presentation is meant to go over your roles and responsibilities as a Chief Administrative Officer. So what is RIM? Records and Information Management, also known as RIM, is an essential part of your job. Both records and the information within them should be considered assets for your agency. And as Chief Administrative Officer, you are responsible for ensuring all necessary tools are in place for a successful RIM program. So let's get started with some basic RIM terminology. First off, what is a record? A record is information prepared, owned, received, or retained by a government organization, regardless of format. A record series is a group of similar records. A retention schedule is the length of time a record series needs to be kept. An ARO is the Appointed Records Officer. GRAMA stands for Government Records Access and Management Act. Appraisal is a value assigned to a record and is used for legal, administrative, fiscal, or historical purposes. Classification is the legal designation of a record, and it can be public, private, protected, exempt, or controlled. And disposition is what happens to a record series once retention is met, and that disposition is either destruction or it is transferred to the archives. And all of this terminology can also be found in the Utah Code. Because the definition of a record is so broad, I wanted to give you a few examples of records versus non-records. So some examples of records include accounts payable and receivable, reports, agency history, email, personnel files, policies and procedures, information in databases, correspondence, contracts, and social media. An example of some non-records may include computer programs, books in a library, junk mail, and personal email. As a note, your email and text messages are records. So always keep your personal records and accounts separate. If you get a GRAMA request for your email or text messages and they are business related, they must be provided according to the classification in GRAMA. So let's go over your role as Chief Administrative Officer. It is your duty to create and maintain proper documentation of your organization and its functions, policies, decisions, and procedures. You need to establish a RIM program if your agency doesn't have one, or actively support your RIM program if one has already been established. You need to appoint a records officer to work with archives and the public. Ensure all records officers are currently certified. Respond to GRAMA appeals with written notice of your decision. Update your organization's RIM policies and procedures as new technology and software emerges. And ensure staff coordinates with records officers and has a basic understanding of their records responsibilities, because they may not be records officers, but they're creating records as well. Now let's briefly go over the role of your appointed records officers. So your appointed records officers are the best in-agency resource for your records. They are appointed by you, the CAO, and they are the archive's direct line of communication. They must be certified by archives by either taking the GRAMA test or the RIM Essentials test. And the duties of your ARO include the care, maintenance, scheduling, disposition, designation, access, and preservation of your records. And they will work with us, the archives, to achieve all of this. Your records officers also respond to GRAMA requests. Now let's briefly talk about GRAMA. A GRAMA request is any written request for government records. They usually come through the Open Records portal, but they can also be emails, texts, letters, or any other written form. And how it works is a person submits a request for a record, and it must be answered within 10 business days. Your ARO responds to the request by providing records, denying the request, or requesting an extension on the 10 business day deadline. If the ARO denies the request and the requester appeals, you will be required to respond to them after reviewing the requested records and their classification yourself. If you deny the request and the requester does not accept your denial, then they may appeal to the State Records Committee for a hearing, or you may reach out to the ombudsman for mediation. If mediation does not resolve the issue, then you, your ARO, and/or legal counsel will need to appear before the SRC to explain your decision. And it should be noted that as CAO, you have the opportunity to select a GRAMA designee for appeals if you do not wish to be a part of the appeals process yourself. So some benefits of supporting an active RIM program include reduced cost for your organization, efficiency, reduced risk, transparency, and better documentation of agency history. So to recap, your duty as Chief Administrative Officer is to understand your organization's functions and records, ensure an active RIM program, appoint and support your records officers, respond to GRAMA appeals or assign a designee, and learn the terminology. And the duties of your AROs include create, maintain, schedule, dispose of, and transfer your organization's records, work with archives to ensure proper scheduling and disposition of those records, respond to GRAMA requests, and become certified. So if you need help with starting a records management program, or if you just have any questions in general, please feel free to contact any of our RIM specialists here at the Division of Archives. You have myself, Avalon Snell. We can also contact Heidi Steed, Renee Wilson, or Matthew Pierce. If you need help with GRAMA, it's part of the Utah Code. It's 63G-2, or you can contact the Ombudsman, Rosemary Cundiff, the Secretary, Rebecca Shaw, or the Open Records Portal and Public Notice Website Administrator, Dylan Mace. And thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.